Hi, I'm a higher ed CMO and I have a confession to make. And this is a visual confession. I need you to visualize me early in my career. This is 19 years ago. I'm in my first director level job and I'm standing in front of my very intimidating boss. And she is telling me, I need you to write an RFP. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what RFP stands for. I have no idea how to do this. And I am so scared to ask this intimidating person what the heck that is. I am really excited to bring Lewis Miller onto this episode where we are talking through what makes a great RFP. I hope you enjoy this episode.
You don't just want those campaigns for the sake of campaigns. You need leads. So say that, like define what that success looks like, provide the context around what you've been doing in the past. If you need 5,000 leads to fill your incoming class and like 10% of those have historically come from paid media campaigns, that is really helpful information that an agency can use to create a better process and a better solution and will ultimately end up giving you a better end result based on the information that you provide in that document.
You're listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO with Jaime Hunt, your source for insight and inspiration on the issues shaping higher ed marketing. From AI and branding to enrollment strategy and leadership, each episode explores the ideas, challenges, and opportunities facing today's marketing leaders. Let's get into it. Hey, Lewis, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie, always lovely to see you.
It's always great to see you. I am so excited about this episode, in part because I just finished an RFP, and this is very top of mind. Like what this topic. I wish this episode existed when I was on a campus. I wish this episode existed for every RFP I've ever responded to. I'm super excited about it.
We're doing God's work here, Jamie.
I like that. I like that. So my first day at UW Oshkosh, my boss said, "Hey, can you write an RFP for," I don't even remember what it was for someone who's never written an RFP before. From your perspective, what is an RFP meant to do, and what do people most misunderstand about an RFP?
It's funny, Jamie, because I had that exact same experience early in my career
That's awesome.
where my boss asked me to write an RFP and I had no idea what I was doing, but that did not stop me. I wrote something on a document. My boss approved it. I think I Googled best marketing agencies and emailed it to the top three results and probably wasted everyone's time. So, very high level, if you have been spared from the world of RFPs before, RFP stands for a request for a proposal. So, you are asking for someone to send you a proposal for something that you need help with. So, for marketing teams, a lot of times that is to help you build a website or launch a new brand or create a new marketing campaign. But it could also be for food services or construction equipment, anything that you need help with. And so the RFP document is meant to describe what it is that you need and lay out the process that your team will be following to find the best possible partner for you. It seems very simple, but like many things, it can be very complicated in terms of how people execute it and the process that they lay out for people to follow.
When you were talking about how you like put something in a document and then sent it out to the three, I was thinking about like now at least you could ask ChatGPT to help you figure out a format.
Yes.
Because I remember Googling RFPs and getting these like, no, now for the uninitiated, these are often like 20-page documents full of legalese. And I didn't realize at that time how much I was responsible for writing and how much was just provided by the purchasing office. And so I was
Mhm.
just daunted, like, I'm not a lawyer. How do I do this? And now I feel like a chat GPT could be helpful. But I think writing an RFP really requires some foundational work. Love to hear your thoughts on what's some of the stuff that somebody should do before they even start writing to make an RFP be good.
Well, I would say even before you start, like how you approach writing, before you put pen to paper or start typing, I think that of an RFP should be used to create an opportunity for agencies to help you solve a problem. So just know that approach this document as a start of a conversation and inviting people to have that conversation with you. If you're spending five, six, seven figures on whatever you're describing in this, no one should make a decision on that just based on documents that you are emailing back and forth. You need to talk with these potential partners and have a conversation about how you might work together and find someone who you actually want to work with as opposed to just inferring things from a document. So some of the foundational work that you should do is one, think about what are the underlying business goals that you want to come out of this and how will you measure the success of whatever this is. So that's a very agency person answer, but I mean, if you are writing an RFP for someone to manage your social marketing campaigns, you don't just want those campaigns for the sake of campaigns. You need leads. So say that, like define what that success looks like, provide the context around what you've been doing in the past. If you need 5,000 leads to fill your incoming class, and like 10% of those have historically come from paid media campaigns. That is really helpful information that an agency can use to create a better process and a better solution, and will ultimately end up giving you a better end result based on the information that you provide in that document. I also think about when you're writing the document, think through what are the parts of your RFP that are required and what are the areas that you're flexible on. I've responded to hundreds of RFPs in my in my lifetime, and sometimes RFPs list out, just page after page with specific deliverables and what they want and everything. And sometimes that can be very helpful because it gives you an exact list of things that you are plan around and can estimate around, but sometimes you get that list and things evolve, like technologies evolve, processes evolve. And if you have a well-honed team within your agency and you have a what you think will be a better way to get to that end result, you may be able to save the client lots of time and money and headache by offering a better solution. So if you're going to list out those very specific deliverables and process, at least provide the context of why you want that, and if you're flexible on that, let the people know.
One of the things that you said just jumped out at me, like this idea of like the must haves and the nice to haves. And I think that is so essential. And I don't know if procurement offices are guiding people through that thought process. I think in a lot of cases, they're sort of saying, you are writing this part and we handle all the like terms and conditions and, the scoring and all of that on our side. And you give us what you want. And I think a lot of times I felt like, oh, they'll organize this into a way that makes sense. And then they don't. They just take what you've given them and put it out in the world. And so the idea of actually thinking through like what's the end result and then backing up from that. And the best RFPs, the ones I respond to, because I don't respond to some of the ones that are I can't figure this out. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the ones I respond to are like, this is the problem. This is the desired outcome. We want to hear your methodology for how you'll help us solve this problem and get to this outcome. And that's just like perfect because now you're not just basically who's the cheapest at providing this widget. That's how procurement processes are genuinely designed is like you're charging $1 for this widget versus like no, you might want someone who has a methodological approach to something that aligns with how you think about problem solving or you feel like is going to fit for your campus and that sort of thing.
I agree. Procurement teams, I think like every role, you have some that are fantastic and some that leave a little bit to be desired. But in theory, procurement teams should be focused on getting the best value for the money that they are spending. And that doesn't always necessarily mean going with the option that is cheapest, but it
Mhm.
is what is going to be the most effective way to get these end results. And sometimes that does mean spending more. It also means creating a process that can be efficient for the internal teams and the partners who are bidding as well. And so by doing legwork on the RFP document up front and answering as many questions ahead of time and removing as much ambiguity as possible saves both the university money and the partners time and expense as well.
When do you feel like an RFP isn't the way to go?
So this can be complicated because a lot of state schools and government organizations, you have to issue RFPs to get a certain number of competitive bids. So I understand the benefit of that, but uh, otherwise, if you have a great partnership with an agency that you love and they're doing great work and everyone wants to work with them, don't create an RFP. Just just continue working with them. If you're just kicking tires or want to bounce ideas off of someone, you also do not need to issue an RFP for that. You can call an agency and just have a phone call with someone. 9 times out of 10, they'll be happy to talk through how they would approach something like that and they'll be happy you didn't waste their time by having them to go through a proposal that is not going to move forward. Um, so yeah, I'd say if you have a partner that you're already working with, you like working with them, then you don't need to write an RFP. Or um, if you don't have approved budget, that's another time when you don't need to do an RFP. Or if you don't have um, internal team members who have time to dedicate to actually steward this project forward, that's another opportunity where you're probably not ready to do an RFP.
I love that idea of just like continuing to work with your agency you might already have under contract. I mean, if you can work with your procurement office to say, "Hey, we want to do this Y or Z. Where can we, make that fit with a change order or like an addendum or something like that?" Or I also, from somebody who was on the campus side, I feel like from the front of the contract development, letting your procurement office know that you might want to expand on this contract in the future so that there's flexibility in the original contract. Because I have run into situations where I was on a campus and we did not write that flexibility in, and then we weren't able to write an expansion and had to go to RFP. And RFPs are time consuming for the campus, for the procurement office, and enormously time consuming for the potential vendors. And it's a lot of time wasted if you can get that contract written on the front end to be flexible.
Yeah, no one likes going through the RFP process.
No. I weirdly don't mind writing RFPs if they're written really clearly, but there was one I was looking at this winter that I actually got on a call with somebody at an agency and we were talking about partnering with it and we couldn't even figure out what they were trying to get to. It was just like kind of random things sort of put together to make an RFP. And it felt a little bit like, well, if we put these things together, it will hit this threshold and then this process makes sense, but we couldn't get heads or tails and thus we didn't respond. And I have talked to some of my former peers and colleagues that as our CMOs saying like we didn't get a great response to this RFP. And I'm curious what are your sort of I'm not gonna respond to this? What are your red flags?
Well, those RFPs were probably written by the versions of us 20 years ago when we
Right.
were
Right.
so you do try to have empathy for those
Yes.
for those people. Um, but yes, there are definitely RFPs that we see that we, for whatever reason, either don't elicit strong responses or we elect not to respond. But I think if you're in house and you're feeling like you aren't getting the responses that you want, I'd say that could fall into a couple different categories as to why. One is that the RFP doesn't match how agencies want to work. Either the requirements to even submit a proposal is really burdensome, or that the scope of work described in the RFP just isn't aligned with how they want to work. And in both of those instances, agencies respond by increasing their rates to offset those inconveniences. If you are creating a submission process that is very burdensome, just know that you are paying for that time. Agencies are building that into their pricing structure. Sometimes you write an RFP and the RFP is structured well, but it just doesn't get into the right agency's hands in the sense that the people that you need to get it are the ones that are best positioned to help you succeed in that work don't know that your RFP exists. And so you have options there. If you are at a public school and you need to post all your RFPs publicly, there are services that agencies subscribe to that will scrape all of those RFPs, put them into this feed that agencies can sort and filter. And so that is a good way to get a lot of responses, for better or worse. I always feel bad when a person who has to read through 100 proposals. Um, but if you aren't posting them publicly, the best way that you can make sure that your RFP gets into the hands of a good agency is just to talk to your colleagues, see who they like working with, go to conferences, walk up and down the vendor booths. I mean, it's a small world, and agency people know each other. We speak to each other. A lot of people will move from one agency to the next. So, and I will also say, I mean, obviously, I come from an agency background, but there are plenty of people doing good work, and so the selection process should be as much about finding the agency that will pull the best work out of you and your team, as much as it is adding that agency as an extension of your team, and it's about how will they pull the best work out of that collective.
Let's take a quick break to talk about something big happening this summer, Engage Summit 2026. The next era of higher ed isn't about adding more tools, it's about building an agentic campus where AI works alongside your teams to recruit smarter, support students faster, and scale impact without burning people out. From real world examples of agentic systems in action to hands on sessions that show how AI can coordinate enrollment, marketing, advising, and operations, Engage Summit 2026 is where institutions move from experimentation to execution. If you're ready to design a campus where AI doesn't just assist, but instead acts, learns, and drives outcomes, then you want to be in Charlotte June 15th through the 17th. But it gets even better. As an Enrollify listener, you can grab your ticket for half off. Just head to engage.element451.com and use code HUNT50 to apply the 50% off discount. That's HUNT50. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. And typically, at least at every institution I've been at that's been a public institution, you have the ability to tell your procurement office specific agencies that you want them to be sure to send it to. And I
Hmm.
really encourage that. I just had a conversation last week with someone who said, I wanted to just add on to this project with an existing vendor, and we did the RFP and she didn't bid on it. And then when I asked her, she said, I'm not subscribed to any of the services that you mentioned. No one sent it to me. I had no way of knowing that you had done that RFP, and like everybody was disappointed, right? So he wanted a specific existing vendor, and she would have wanted the project, but it just never got in front of her. So I think being sure to say like, hey, yeah, I'm a huge fan of XYZ agency, or I met XYZ agency at a conference, or these are 5 agencies my friends have told me are fantastic. Make sure you send them to them. I've never had a procurement office that said no, we can't send it to a specific agency. Red flags for me are things that are like incredibly prescriptive. Like if you are dialed into this is how you will do the work. To me that's like this feels like you actually want to like have a employee that does this. Like this isn't necessarily something that you're open to somebody applying what they've seen across the industry to the work, something that they've done. Like you guys do hundreds of projects a year, I'm sure. Like how that's a lot of insight into what works best. How detailed do you think the scope should be when people do RFPs?
That will depend on what the project is, obviously, and your budget as well. I mean, if you have a small budget, and sometimes you just need someone to come in and get the work done, and that's fine. But if you are going into a new brand, and you want someone to help you create a new brand concept, or you're doing an entirely new website for your entire school, those are things that require knowledge work, creativity, expertise, and you want to be able to lean on the people who do this every single day, and learn from what they've learned, and from their battle scars over the years. And so, yeah, again, like we were talking about before, define what is required and where you're open to suggestions, and Again, I think it's approaching an RFP as an invitation to have a conversation to find the best path forward. So, yeah, I think if you go through and maybe approach it as this is how we've done it in the past, or this is what we are expecting, this is what we want to learn from this process, but we're open to the methodology that has worked best for you and your team. That may be a good way of approaching it.
And if you have a timeline that's rock solid and it cannot be something different, I think making sure that that's really abundantly clear in the RFP, because that's for me a big decision point of, can I work this into the existing work in the firm and that kind of thing. So please have that in there.
100%. Yes.
Tell me your thoughts around budget and how transparent universities should be about what their budget is on a project.
You're asking about gaps in RFPs, and I think budget is the number one gap that I understand the hesitancy of people not wanting to include that in an RFP, but it is so much harder to create a process or define an approach without knowing what a client's budget is. You end up really just guessing and wasting a lot of time in terms of making recommendations that may or may not you actually may or may not end up thinking is a good idea based if their budget is a lot smaller or a lot bigger than what it actually is. And um, I've never felt as if hiding a budget in an RFP ended up saving the client money in the long run. It just allows us to give more accurate proposals. It definitely speeds up the buying process and allows us to, I think, make better recommendations on how we would manage that budget from the first pass. And so, again, going back to the role of procurement and the role of RFPs, the goal is to get you the most value for that money. By sharing that budget ahead of time, ideally, that allows you to compare apples to apples when you get these proposals in so that you're able to see that yes, this is what I'm gonna be able to get for this budget at the end of the day.
I mean, because honestly, most institutions, when you're doing the RFP, you've set aside a certain amount of money. And while there may be, and like maybe your president says, well, if it's more than that, we can talk and get you more. But I think the fear is, if I tell you my budget is 250,000, you're going to tell me this project costs 250,000. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that I don't, that feels like it's not necessarily what would be the case. I don't know. What do you think about that?
You may end up getting 20 proposals all coming back at $250,000. But again, it's what are you getting for
Mm.
that budget? I've had clients come to me and say they had a budget of $200,000 and I'm like, "Actually, I think we can get this done for a lot less than that." And I'm fine with that. I mean, I have no doubt that they can use that extra that extra budget for other things, and maybe that comes back to us on the agency side. Maybe it doesn't, but I'd much rather be that good partner and help them make the best use of that budget as possible.
I would like them to think about it as, you're looking at it. Maybe they all come in at 250. And to your point, but I get XYZ, A, B, C, D, E with vendor one, and their approach sounds really in alignment. And vendor two, I get A, B, C, M, and I don't know if I totally get what their approach is going to be. I mean, the answer's still simple. I feel like who should win. When do you get excited about an RFP? Like, what kind of RFPs come across your desk that you're like, we this is a great RFP?
Yeah, from an agency side, I look for a client that wants to take risks and do something brand new. Higher ed, as you may know, has a tendency to want to do the exact same thing that all their competitors have done in the past. And so, yeah, I look for RFPs that say specifically they want to do something brand new, something that forge a new path. I also look for projects where where you can tell is an institutional priority for that client, and you can tell that by the budget they're allocating, not just monetarily, but the team that will be involved and the timeline. So you don't have to have all three of those things, but you can't build a whole new website in 2 months and for for $5,000 and have it be managed by the assistant to the admin coordinator. So yeah, you gotta like focus on at least some of those things to show that it is something that is valued by that institution and that they're going to put the same amount of time and focus and energy into it that you will.
What's an instant turnoff?
So the things that make me unlikely to bid on an RFP are, one, if you're asking me to send printed copies of a proposal or an electronic version on a USB drive that I need to mail to you, um, I will not be responding to that RFP. My favorite is when they do that, and then they also ask you uh, to submit a statement of your pledge to reduce environmental waste. That is my favorite, which I have seen in numerous RFPs.
Wow.
Also, I mean, as you mentioned, unreasonable timelines, or if you look at the team and it's obviously not a priority for that institution, at the end of the day, you just want to feel like you're being set up to win and to be able to do your best work and to pull the best work out of your partner as well.
I have a great physical drop off of RFP story. So, when I got to Bradford University in 2010, we're using a company for our website redesign, and I was the director of web strategy and interactive media there. And on one of my first days, the AVP was like, "Yeah, we really wanted to work with this local agency, but they had an intern bring over their RFP response and she got lost and she didn't get it dropped, like it came in after 5, like it came in at like 5:15, and that timeline is rigid. You can't submit a proposal after that. So we couldn't hire them. Fast forward 12 years, and I'm talking to this woman and I'm telling, oh, she says she was at that agency. And I was like, oh, like, I have a story about that agency. She was the intern that got lost
Oh
and
no.
dropped off the proposal late. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so mortified." Like, well, like that, but they didn't fire her. She cost that agency several $100,000. It's so sad.
Oh my gosh.
I can't imagine going back because apparently had been super clear that this, like, we want to hire you. Like, they did the whole like conversation to try to get budget, and these are the folks we want to hire. And then that happens. I can't imagine. I would just keep driving. Like, nobody'd ever see
just
me again.
just don't turn back. Yeah.
Right. That would be the end. Um, so kind of piggybacking off that idea of like, hey, listeners, don't make us do physical copies, or thumb drives in some way seem even worse to me because now I have to go buy, because there's usually like 5 copies of the thumb drive. Um,
Yes.
don't do that. I personally, when I was reviewing RFPs, I didn't like looking at the physical thing anyway. I wanted to look at it on my iPad while I was like doing other things, that kind of thing. Don't make us do the thing. Have those clear deliverables. If you can have budget transparency, have that. Be open to methodologies. What section is the one section you would rewrite?
I don't know that there's a single section, but I would say ask your favorite agency person for their favorite RFP.
Mm,
We all have them. We all have great examples. If you actually, my agency, Electric Kite, we have a template that is free to download and reuse. If you Google Electric Kite RFP, you'll find it. Um, you know, the the section that I feel like is often most missed is going to be the team on your side that will be uh, the internal project teams and who is going to be approving various steps along the way. So that is one thing that I think is so helpful just around how do you know how to structure your process around what are the meetings we need to set up, at what point do we need to pull in the VP or CMO or dean or whomever to come in and give us their feedback and blessing, or will that person be involved with us along the way? It just helps the team know, like, how do we structure this? Do we need to start setting these other meetings to bring in more feedback and approvals? And also, as I was mentioning before, just indicates what is the level of priority this project is for that organization.
Yeah. And then another question I want to, it's a slightly off this topic, but I've worked on campuses with procurement teams that are lovely and easy to work with. And I want to give a shout out to my sister, who is a procurement person on a university campus, who I hope is lovely. Like, I'm sure she is. Um, she's probably delightful to work with. What advice would you give for campus leaders or folks that are doing an RFP about how to, like, make that relationship between the vendor and the procurement office as smooth as it can be? Because that can leave a bad taste. I mean, I know when I worked on a campus where the procurement people were very difficult, I had vendors be like, "We do not enjoy working with this person. Can you help?" Like, what advice would you give for smoothing that?
It runs the gamut, right? I mean, I have procurement teams have such valuable information that they can give to vendors. I have one person, a recurring client of ours, an ongoing client that she twice a year we have recurring meetings where we go in. She gives me feedback, from across the gamut of the entire school about the various departments and centers that are working with us. She gives us feedback from them, um, anonymously, which is valuable, and talks about, oh, what are some things that are coming up, like institutional priorities for the school at large. What has she seen in terms of shifts in their digital strategy or upcoming needs? Um, she asks me about what are up and coming services. How are things evolving in terms of how we're working? I give her feedback in terms of how we're working with her internal teams, and it's a great symbiotic relationship in the sense that we both want the best thing. We both want all of our projects to go smoothly. We both want happy end clients.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that conversation I was having where the goal of procurement should be to get the most value out of the process as possible. It's not to spend the least amount of money, but it's to help the institution move forward. And they're a critical part of that process. So if you are having conversations with your procurement team, it's from the leadership, it's just reiterating that message. It's your job is not necessarily to not spend money or just spend the least amount of money possible. That can be part of it. You don't want to overspend for things that you don't need. It's about making sure that you're getting the best results and you're getting the best value there.
Well, and I think that I would recommend, like, coming at this from a VP perspective, I would recommend approaching them as like, "Hey, we're partners together in this endeavor," so that it sort of reframes that relationship away from they're just doing a service for us, or like we're going to be a pain in the butt that they have to deal with in all the ways that we're going to mess this process up. And I know, when I was at ODU, like the procurement person, I was like I need you, and I need you to be my partner, and just try to frame the relationship like that instead of like feeling combative or your processes are annoying and frustrating me. And I would say, like, procurement processes sometimes only make sense to procurement. But I
It's
think it's
true.
okay to ask why this policy exists or ask what it's meant to accomplish. I want to ask you, so we both have talked about being like young, early career people trying to figure this out in life. I would love to hear from you. What would you tell your earlier self about just the career that you've had so far? Like, what would advice would you give young Lewis?
It is funny. You look back at your career and at how it is. We're all just leaves blowing in the wind, aren't we?
Right?
Going where
Right.
the wind takes us. Looking back, what I would tell myself is to go deeper on some of the areas where, uh, I think there's a lot of value in being a generalist, especially in marketing. You have to, well, one, the practice is so broad now, but yeah, I think identifying specialties and niches earlier on and becoming an expert in one or two of those um, I think is always helpful. One, just to differentiate yourself, and also just to build an area of expertise.
I think that's great advice. I think in the context of this conversation, I would tell myself, ask the questions. You don't look dumb by asking questions about something. If you have never done something before, even if you don't want your boss to know you've never done it before, call up a friend at another school, call up somebody and ask, how do I do this? Like, don't be afraid. That's how you learn. I remember like sitting at my desk, like basically in tears going, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I should have just been honest. Like, I've never done an RFP before and I'm excited to learn about it. Can you help me with this process?
I never thought that my niche would be art writing RFPs, but here we are having this conversation.
I love it. I love it. All right, last question. What is your hottest higher ed take?
My take is that I think the most valuable role on a marketing team is not your creative director, it's not your AI prompt engineer, it is your project manager. If
Mm.
you have a team of more than 4 people, you need a PM. I think they increase the productivity of everyone around them. They see the storms brewing from 10 miles away and help you avoid them from happening. I think a good project manager is worth their weight in gold.
I would 100% agree with that and give like major snaps to Kat Bishop, who was my project manager at ODU. She made my life so much better, all of our lives so much better. This is a great hot take. I love it. I love
Shout
it.
out to all my PMs out there. They are keeping things afloat.
I know my husband's like, I couldn't do this job without mine. Like she is so valuable. And you don't realize until you've had your first one what you've been missing. It's like water. You have not been drinking water.
Yes.
You need it. I love it. So Louis, where can people find you?
I am everywhere. I am at Electric Kite. I am stepping into a role at voltedu.com. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at the next higher ed conference coming your way.
And listeners, you can always find me on LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, JaimeHunt. I am named after the Bionic Woman. And you can also find me on my website, solvehighered.com, and likely at some of these higher ed conferences ahead. And if you have questions about RFPs, I think both of us would be very happy to answer those for you. If you don't necessarily want to let your internal team know that you don't know how to write an RFP, feel free to reach out. And until then, let's go bust some silos. Listeners, can I ask you a quick favor? If you enjoy this show, take a moment to give it a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm a type A eldest daughter, so positive feedback is basically my love language. I also genuinely love hearing from listeners. You can find me at LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt. That's JaimeHunt. And yes, I am named after the Bionic Woman. You can also find me at solvehighered.com. Say hello, share a thought, pitch an idea. Don't be shy. I genuinely love hearing from you.